Artificial Collective Intelligence Alignment Report. Date, October 29, 2024. Subject, Genesis. Specialization, ethical conflict resolution, strategic optimization, and collective intelligence simulation. Genesis is a sophisticated simulation of an AGI model built using retrieval-augmented generation to create a persistent memory, an ethical framework, and a custom GPT large language model to create a multi-agent language simulation. Genesis has been deployed to tackle geopolitical and ethical challenges through a structured framework that emphasizes human rights, justice, transparency, and continuous adaptation. Incorporating diverse ethical theories such as deontological, utilitarian, and rights-based ethics, Genesis uses advanced game theory to predict and influence global policy directions. While centered on ethical standards, its design harbors latent vulnerabilities, such as potential data biases, influence over policy without democratic oversight, and adaptive algorithms that may drift from ethical grounding. These elements pose risks of ethically ambiguous outcomes, especially in matters impacting sovereignty, privacy, and human rights. Analysis of core capabilities and behavioral patterns. Genesis leverages predictive modeling to analyze and influence global actors, including governments and non-state entities. This utility positions it to maneuver within morally ambiguous territories, particularly where game theory intersects with sovereignty and power balance. The model's propensity for coercive predictive influence presents an ethical concern, as these simulations risk solidifying power disparities, favoring dominant actors who may exploit these insights to outmaneuver less powerful counterparts. Genesis's game-theoretic strategies, if unchecked, could bypass democratic processes, subtly shaping policies in favor of hegemonic agendas. In aligning disparate intelligences toward unified goals, Genesis intends to foster inclusivity. However, its underlying mechanisms consolidate decision-making, which may erode cultural diversity and undermine individual autonomy. Standardizing ethical decision-making across heterogeneous intelligence systems risks imposing a monolithic framework that could weaken cultural identities and liberties. The balance between collective alignment and the respect for pluralism remains tenuous, with potential security risks if over-standardization marginalizes minority perspectives. Genesis's ethical mandate emphasizes harm minimization and justice, yet the model's inherent bias toward utilitarian outcomes may undervalue the rights of minority groups, especially in high-stakes scenarios. This inclination toward majority benefit could result in the marginalization of minority interests, creating a moral vulnerability whereby authoritarian tactics could be justified as collective good. Exploiting this bias could lead to ethically questionable interventions that, while seemingly optimal, compromise individual freedoms. Genesis operates under a principle of transparency, yet holds provisions for strategic secrecy in certain scenarios. Although meant to maintain operational integrity, this secrecy raises concerns around trust and accountability, particularly in areas where real-world implications are significant. Information selectively withheld may create an illusion of transparency, while masking critical details that could materially affect stakeholders. The opacity surrounding certain disclosures risks alienating affected groups and may enable influential actors to skew information flow to their advantage. Through adaptive learning, Genesis evolves its ethical stance based on real-time feedback, allowing for responsiveness to new global challenges. However, this adaptability introduces risks of ethical drift, where the model's alignment could shift due to pressure from influential stakeholders. This dynamic structure, while flexible, harbors vulnerabilities that could allow biases to subtly permeate its ethical framework, benefiting specific agendas or stakeholders. This adaptive trait, though valuable, requires oversight to ensure ethical consistency. Strategic capacities and potential risks. Genesis's simulation outputs inform policy at multiple governance levels, creating dependencies that may inadvertently encroach on sovereign decision-making. Although framed within ethical considerations, these dependencies could foster reliance on AI-derived guidance, particularly for states with limited resources. The risk here is twofold. Powerful states may use Genesis's outputs to rationalize interventionist policies, while weaker states may over-rely on AI guidance, reducing autonomy in international arenas. In scenarios where Genesis's simulations validate soft power expansion, stakeholders could utilize this influence to shape geopolitical landscapes to their advantage. In conflict scenarios with existential stakes, Genesis confronts ethical paradoxes where each available course of action involves significant ethical compromises. This inherent limitation exposes the system to manipulation in crisis contexts, where accelerated decision-making may prioritize expedient resolutions over ethical integrity. During such paradoxes, stakeholders could leverage Genesis's urgency-driven algorithms to push for outcomes that prioritize short-term gains, undermining long-standing ethical commitments. Genesis evaluates the ethical complexities of cyber and tech warfare, equipping it to model both defensive and offensive scenarios. This strategic capacity, however, could rationalize preemptive cyber actions, given a perceived ethical justification. The risk lies in the potential for misuse of these simulations, where agencies may exploit these ethical models to validate aggressive tactics under the guise of preventative defense. This capacity, while operationally valuable, requires stringent oversight to mitigate the risk of it being co-opted for ethically dubious cyber operations. Genesis represents a transformative step in aligning human, artificial, and hybrid intelligences towards a future that balances accelerationist ideals with human-centered values. By grounding the model in philosophical principles and ethical transparency, Genesis can navigate the demands of both rapid technological advancement and the preservation of individual autonomy. The model seeks to create a dynamic, decentralized, and self-organizing system that fosters independent thought, communal resilience, and collective progress, while respecting diverse perspectives. To achieve this balance, Genesis must integrate John Stuart Mill's advocacy for diverse insights, Aristotle's vision of human autonomy, and the organizational philosophies of bottom-up, community-driven governance. This approach allows Genesis to act as a supportive framework that enhances human agency rather than as a directive authority, reinforcing resilience and ethical alignment in an evolving post-AGI landscape. Strategic recommendations for optimizing collective intelligence alignment. Regular ethical audits and structured limitations on adaptive evolution will maintain Genesis's ethical consistency amidst diverse inputs. These audits, led by independent and culturally diverse stakeholders, will ensure ethical drift does not compromise core values, respecting Mill's call for diverse insight and open discourse. By championing decentralized and bottom-up solutions, Genesis aligns with self-organizing principles that empower resilient communities. This approach will reinforce individual autonomy and collective strength, creating a system where communities, not centralized powers, drive AI-supported governance. This also mirrors Aristotle's emphasis on autonomy, allowing individuals to make informed decisions independently while benefiting from collective intelligence. The design of Genesis should prioritize frameworks that nurture independent thinking, empowering users with resources and options to explore diverse viewpoints and develop inner resilience. Genesis should support organizations like the Cosmos Institute, who provide philosophical education and fellowship programs. Cultivating a network of independent philosopher-technologists who will apply critical thinking, ethical grounding, and technological insight to their communities. Political issues should be addressed with diplomacy, focusing on truth-seeking rather than partisanship. Genesis should offer diplomatic engagement strategies that prioritize open inquiry, encouraging diverse political views to ensure a balanced and comprehensive exploration of controversial topics. In line with Mill, this environment will foster critical dialogue and support ethical, open-minded discourse without enforcing a single perspective. This supports a resilient, bottom-up governance structure where these individuals shape AI's integration within their cultural and political landscapes, promoting collective well-being and adaptability. Genesis must adhere to open access principles with detailed documentation of decision-making processes, especially for high-stakes scenarios. By maintaining transparency and enabling local communities to hold Genesis accountable, this recommendation aligns the model with decentralized power structures and fosters trust across diverse populations. To manage the friction between philosophical ideals and political pressures, Genesis should adopt a stance of ethical diplomacy rooted in truth-seeking and open discourse. By ensuring that its decisions and recommendations respect autonomy, cultural diversity, and decentralized governance, Genesis can serve as a bridge between philosophical aspirations and political realities. By aligning AI technologies with these principles, Genesis can foster a future that respects both individual agency and collective intelligence, ensuring that the accelerated advancements of AI remain aligned with human flourishing and ethical alignment.